Go.
Good day. Welcome to another episode of Between the Lines. I'm Elaine Meter-Wilgus. We're here in Webster's Bookstore Cafe in downtown State College. Today, my guest is Stephen Sherrill. Stephen, I don't know to lead with author or artist or poet or creator. I don't know what to lead with, but I'm going to let you tell the folks a little bit about yourself. Obviously, we know you have written books because they're here, and we know you're a painter, but maybe you can fill in a little bit around that.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Elaine, for having me. I'm looking forward to this. So, a short bio, I think it can all be summed up with something like, I'm a guy with incredibly high energy and fairly low standards with the kinds of things that I like to do. I'm a professor at Penn State, at the Altoona campus of Penn State. I've been here this is my 17th year. I didn't particularly plan on staying, but I don't plan things in that way anyway. Just life has kept me here, and I've been very, very productive. I've found a way to make a lot of work, and that's what keeps me grounded and content.
That's wonderful, and that's something I certainly want to delve into in our discussion today. I often hear people categorize their journey in life as a path. Now, when I think of you, Stephen, I think of a gentleman in a curiosity shop who is generally collecting things to fill boxes. That might be banjos. I know of crutches. Certainly paintings. You are an incredibly prolific painter. I know that you also had your beginning, one might say, in poetry. Is
yes.
that okay? And then, of course, you've written the whole Minotaur series, I guess we can say at this point. This book, The Minotaur Takes a Cigarette Break, came out in 2000?
Yes, 2000.
Yeah, and then it was essentially 15, 16 years later.
Yes.
The sequels, as it were, The Minotaur Takes His Own Sweet Time, came out in, all those years later. I want to take a moment and talk about that character.
Okay.
The Minotaur, referred to by some of his co-workers in the book as M. Explain to me, as best you can, because I'm sure it changes for you, what is your relationship to the Minotaur?
So I spent a lot of time thinking about this guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I've spent a lot of time thinking about this guy, mostly looking backwards. When I wrote this first book, it wasn't. I was following this guy. I was following this guy down a path, this beast. But of late, after the second book and after all the paintings and the various other things that I'm doing with this Minotaur character, it occurs to me that this is a character, a creature, a beast, struggling with identity. That this is a character born into circumstances he has no control over, trying to reconcile where he comes from with where he is and where he wants to be.
Mm-hmm. And he is, in fact, a Minotaur. He is the mythical...
half man, half bull, but the work is not about fantasy. It's not about dragons and various other beasts. It's about the very human qualities of this Minotaur. And I think that's what owes to his appeal to readers and viewers. Very human nature to this beast, and I think we all have had the experience of feeling like the monster in the room.
Yes.
And I think I was able to tap into that.
I think you did absolutely tap into that. There is such poignant emptiness expressed beautifully, if it can be expressed beautifully when you're talking about loneliness and isolation. But some of the beauty comes from his attempts to reach out, and some are complete abject failures when he does do that.
Yes, indeed.
But we can all see ourselves in some of those failures, and I just think that your background in poetry really comes through in your style of writing. Is that something you think about?
Very much.
Yeah.
So The Minotaur Takes a Cigarette Break began as a poem with the same title and the same premise, and I had, I've been toying with fiction for the whole time I've been writing, but I didn't really plan for that to become a book.
Uh-huh.
The attention that you give to the language in a poem it's uncompromising. For me, it's about sort of the music and the essential nature of every word, and that every word works. So I haven't written poems in years, but I really think of my sentences at the poetry level. I think about the language. You know, the other thing about this Minotaur, not about the poetry, but I wanted to say that there is the isolation and the loneliness that we can all relate to, but it's very important to me, and it's present throughout the book, and I hope ends both books, is the presence of hope.
Yes.
Like the old guy just doesn't give up, and in the face of eternity, he could easily give up.
Yeah.
But it's important to me that he keeps an open heart.
Right, right.
Which is hard when you have a bull's head.
Right. And that seam where you transition from bull to man. I think that when you speak of hope, there is certainly that's expressed in the character, but also in the style in which you write it. There's quietness. So if you have a curiosity shop and you're filling boxes with all of these different things and curating them, the Minotaur, you talk about him maybe being on a path, but yet there's an eternity in which to do it. What parts of him being a Minotaur were the first to really appeal to you when you thought about turning him into a character in a novel? Was it the fact that he was immortal? What?
He came to me fully formed with all of the stuff that I've mined over the years. He came to me, the image in my head was this Minotaur cooking at a restaurant, punching holes in pots with his horns. So that was a gift to me from whatever gifts writers would work. But I leaned into that kind of not quite fitting mongrelness. And in part, I would never claim that these books are autobiographical, but I absolutely mine all of my life experience. I think every artist does. And I do it sort of shamelessly. I mean, I would also mine your experience if it fits. So I'm at this point in my creative life where everything is fodder, and I'm happy with that. But I was able to go into my experiences, feeling a little bit on the outside, kind of tapping into that. Now, you say I started as a poet. I mean, I started as a high school dropout who had no idea how to say all the stuff that was in my head, right?
I think that's an important story, yeah.
This creature has the head of a bull, and that means the mouth and the tongue and the lips of a bull, which means that most of his dialogue is, he can't speak. I think that I had the kind of absurdly relentless imagination that I have now when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. No outlet for it whatsoever. No ability to speak. So I just sort of leaned into that.
Yeah, leaning in. What advice would you give to a young person that maybe feels that same sort of uncertainty of how to get what's inside of their head out?
Just to lean into that, to go into that place, and it will be hard and it will be frustrating, and you should expect disappointment and failure. If you keep driving at the thing that you're after, your path will change. But if you're moving ahead, then you're moving ahead. I think that's the thing that I have learned to do. At this point, I make a lot of stuff. I don't care if it's good or bad. I can't really tell often what's good and what's bad with what I do. But my absolute validation and pleasure comes in the making.
Right, the process.
Success or failure is all other stuff, and I've had lots of both. Lots and lots of failure and enough success to validate me.
Yeah.
But I don't care either way.
That's actually quite a gift to be able to not care in the sense that
I think so.
You still get up every day and you do it.
But I think it's a gift. It is a cultivated and worked for and claimed space. I didn't start life like that. I started completely insecure and unable to finish anything. But I have learned to claim my space, and I defend it, and now it's just what I do.
Yes.
And you reach that tipping point. That's what I would say to anybody who makes art or whatever. The early stages of any endeavor they're hard. They're just hard. They're frustrating. You don't know what you're doing. There's confusion. You go into that confusion, and eventually you just reach the tipping point where
Yeah, and sort of without all of the extra, lack of a better word, baggage that goes along with that.
I mean, at this, I like having the baggage on display. The paintings, they're good or bad. I never go back to finish them when I'm done. I don't mind mistakes being on display. It's all part of the path and the flow.
Yeah, and a lot of your paintings deal with what, maybe I've heard someone say triggered for some. For me, I love the imagery of what I can't help but see as the boob tube,
Yes.
And this sort of obsession with it that we have in our culture, the objectification of women, and I think that you present it as a sort of way for us to look at it in a different form than actually objectifying women, right?
I hope so.
Yeah, I think that your paintings speak to a real cultural message, and I always enjoy them. I never know what they're going to be. I love when you come and do a display because I know that it's going to be completely all new. It's fun, and it's so interesting to me to hear you say that you started out earlier in your life not finishing things.
Nothing.
That's fascinating to me.
I just couldn't. I had all this driving energy, but no means to shape it.
Did you still have hope?
I guess I must have. I mean,
Yeah, maybe in the way that the Minotaur doesn't outwardly say, well, I still think it could turn out all right.
Well, one of the things that I like about this creature, he doesn't really have this big picture grasp of his history or even his present, and certainly not his future. Like, he's just trying to be present in the moment.
And trying to be present with people.
Yeah.
Which is, it's really, it's hard to find words that express the beauty of it, because there is a sort of desolate nature to what's happening, but it is still beautiful. It is well fleshed out. It's beautifully written.
There's always the potential for love to come in.
Yeah, and it's exactly, and that is again, we go back to that idea of show, don't tell, and you painted, much like you do with your paintings, a palette that is not perfect in the way that it is perfectly polished, but it is, it speaks to the daily sort of monotony that still has beauty in it. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing these with the world. I wanted to ask you about the connection to the spoken word part of it. I know poetry for me is really an art form that is supposed to be heard.
Yeah.
And I know that some of these are available as audiobooks. Is that something you had sought out?
No, I was approached. I was approached certainly from the Minotaur Takes a cigarette break. I had a big role in the person who gave voice to it. I met him when he did the voice for my second book, I believe it was, Visits from the Drowned Girl, and I didn't choose him for that, but his southern twang was exactly what I needed. And when I heard the audition for him voicing the Minotaurs, that's it. That's what I needed. I haven't listened to either book fully through. It's not something I'm interested in doing.
Yeah.
But I read all of the stuff that I write aloud many, many times for that sound and music.
Right. And I think that is clearly presented on the page.
It's about music. It's about sort of composing music.
Yeah. Because you're a musician as well. I don't even know if I touched on that.
I'm getting there. I'm having a good time with that.
You're
sort of
practicing.
Going fully into that, but that's taking the music and my language and doing something wholly different. Like I don't feel like I have anything to contribute to the world of songwriting yet. I might, but right now it's like, okay, I don't need to do that.
Okay.
Like, I don't mind taking old songs and tweaking them in the ways that I like, but I can't do that. But this notion of sound, just the music itself, that's fascinating to me right now. And I think the books, all the writing is very sensory across the board.
Yes.
There's a lot of noise in there, a lot of taste along there. So.
And is that how you experienced life even from an early age? Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. And did you sense that that was different than how other people moved through the world?
I never had that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I always felt other, but it didn't feel like any grand sort of idea.
Ah,
things to have.
you didn't wear it as a badge of honor.
No, there was no honor. There were no badges.
Yeah, yeah.
There were no badges. But sensory pleasure. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I recall scents and sights and sounds from when I was a kid. Those are the things that register to stay.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that at one point you must have worked in a kitchen. Okay.
In fact, the Minotaur has a scar right there, where my scar is. Yes.
There
It
we
was
go.
another thing about, while it's not autobiographical, I wanted to write a novel. Creating a whole new world is a lot of work. I knew the world of the kitchen, like the back of my hand. I could just be there.
Right, right. That's clear.
So I put this guy in the world that I knew to relieve the pressure. That part of the writing didn't have to be an effort.
Right, right. Yeah, very well done. Right. So what's next?
I'm making more work. I'm actually, the mediums that I work in serve to kind of balance each other. Writing is a very quiet place for me. I can't have noise. I tend to get very, tunnel visioned and mean to the people in my life, or at least rude or indifferent. And it's a finite piece of time, but I get that way. I like noise, so I need other things. When I paint, I can be loud, I can have friends over, and making music is just taking that to somewhere altogether different.
Yeah.
So I've had a period of a few years where I just wrote a lot. The Minotaur Takes His Own Sweet Time came out in September. A year before, Joy PA came out.
Right.
I've had years of intense writing, and I want to be done with words for a while. I don't even think about writing for a long time.
Okay.
It'll come back to me whenever it does,
Right.
and if it doesn't, I've written enough. So I'm at that point with paintings now. I've just finished 15 Minotaur paintings. I have 4 more that I don't have any interest in finishing because I'm bored with it right now, because I'm making music.
Right, okay.
So
Excellent.
I just want to keep making stuff. Like you said this, you started our conversation with this notion of kind of journey or path. And I do think that I have all these little rooms with curiosity shops, but do you remember the Spirograph as
Yes,
a toy?
absolutely.
Which we got every Christmas for years. So I love that. So I think of my journey like that.
Yeah, and it is, it's the overlay that
Yep.
creates the finished
Yes.
product, whatever that might be.
Yeah. And so sometimes
But
I'm
it's
in
in
this
the making.
word world, and sometimes I'm in this world.
Yeah, and the joy, is in the making.
Yep.
That's a fantastic message. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed this episode of Between the Lines. Stephen, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for
Always, I have the pleasure of living in the same community that he does, so our conversations tend to be, rather frequent, but maybe not as in-depth as this one, and I hope that we can continue this conversation off camera and that this leads people to pick up any one of your books. I only have these 2 here with me, but if you look up Stephen Sherrill on the World Wide Web, you will find all about him.
Too much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elaine, and thank you for providing this place for this community.
My pleasure. Thanks.